CXO Community. CXO Community.
Okay, I guess we get started. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good. First off, let me by saying thank you all for taking the time to join us today. My name is Jason Wu. I'm the product marketing manager at Websense. And I believe in today's session we have about 40 minutes. So we'll keep it relatively high level, but keep it informative enough so that, again, when you walk away from this session, you'll gain some insights that you may be able to apply to your daily lives or your daily work lives. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break it up into a few sessions. We'll first start off by talking about the security landscape. Really understand and talk about some of the threats and some of the tactics and methods that some of the hackers and the bad guys are utilizing to employ to steal your private, confidential data. So again, we'll talk a little bit about some of those tactics and how they're very similar to tactics and techniques that we've seen in the past, but how they're actually becoming more sophisticated. So we'll spend the first half of the session talking about the security landscape. But then we'll move on to also another challenge that has arisen for most of us IT security professionals or IT professionals. And that's talking about how the corporate network is expanding beyond the traditional boundaries. You know, the adoption of mobile phones, smartphones, tablets, as well as SaaS applications, cloud applications that are really expanding the traditional boundaries there. So we'll finally wrap it up by guiding you with some best practices, some methods, and some techniques that you can employ to help protect against some of these challenges that we're going to talk to you about today. So first, and again, this is probably going to be a surprise to all of you guys, but the web is getting more dangerous. You know, keep that a secret, right? Now, for those of you who had the opportunity to join us last year, in fact, between last year's event and this year's event, the number of malicious websites has actually increased by 111%. 111%. So again, most of you are probably sitting there thinking, well, those are probably websites that I don't usually go to. I don't go to download the latest viruses.com or hackmywebsite.net, right? You guys are probably all thinking that. And that's a common myth or misnotion. In fact, 80% of all malicious sites are in fact trusted, legitimate websites. Websites that you and I probably go to each and every day, trusting that nothing bad will happen to us when we visit those sites. 80%. And one of those popular websites that we all probably go to every day is Facebook. This has become a beehive opportunity for really these malicious hackers to employ, to utilize Facebook to be able to steal some of your confidential data. So again, we know that that's a trusted site that we go to, hoping that nothing bad will happen when we go there. Now, in fact, a lot of the updates that we get are through Facebook status updates. In fact, 40% of all Facebook status updates now contain links, right? And of those 40%, 9% actually contain links to a malicious site or a spammy site. So again, it's another avenue for the bad guys to direct you to kind of give them your information. So that's one of those areas that you may want to look at even when you're looking through your Facebook at home or at work. Don't tell your bosses, right? So that's another technique there. Another area that is gaining prevalence and is on the rise for hackers is what we call SEO poisoning. How many people are you familiar with that term, SEO poisoning? A few of you? And what SEO poisoning is search engine optimization poisoning. And what that does is the hackers are utilizing buzz terms, headline news. You know, news like, hey, Argentina's basketball team just qualified for the Olympics. Or Britney Spears is thinking about vacationing down here in Argentina in the summer. You know, buzz terms that you may be interested when you're at work and doing a quick search on Google or Yahoo and the popular search engines. And what they do is they leverage those buzz terms and actually create malicious sites revolving around that topic. So they create a website around Britney Spears looking to vacation in Argentina and actually infiltrate that particular website. So that when you do a Google search on Britney Spears vacationing here in Argentina, you'll click on it, and one of the first 1, 2, 3, or 4 search results is something that you might click on because you trust that Google or Yahoo will return relevant results. Of course, when you click on it, they take advantage of some of the vulnerabilities that exist within a browser, or maybe Adobe Flash, or one of the applications that are running on that website. again, that's another technique that is gaining rise, is utilizing buzz terms on search engines to retrieve your data. So again, in fact, 22% of all buzz search term words lead to malicious content. So that's kind of waiting for you there. Another huge trend that we're seeing is a lot of these attacks are now being blended. They're utilizing these techniques that we talked about and putting them all together. So it's no longer 1 plus 1, it's 1 plus 1 equals 3 now in many of these situations. And what we mean by that is, in the past you might have had spam. In the past you might have had a malicious website. So now they're putting those two together. So 89% of all unwanted emails, the emails that you don't want, contain a link now. And oftentimes now those links point you back to these poison sites that we talked about earlier. So again, no longer is it just a spam issue, it's a spam issue involved with a web security issue and a data issue, because that's the final prize that those hackers are looking for, your confidential and private data there. So again, you might have heard about some of these more advanced blending techniques. They've been all over the news. It's been a buzz term for many in the media, right? These blended attacks, you might have heard of Stuxnet. Stuxnet was a worm that was developed that was targeting specifically the Iranian nuclear program. So again, they used this blended attack to, again, basically halt the whole entire Iranian program there. So that was one of these more advanced blended techniques that we talked about. Another was NightTrack, very targeted to oil companies based in the US. They targeted the executives of these US-based oil organizations to steal very confidential data on those organizations there. So again, these terms have been so prevalent and so effective that they've been given a new term by the media, APTs, or Advanced Persistent Threats. Now, many of you are probably saying, hey, I've heard of the term, what is that? Well, APTs, again, is the new version of these blended threats. That new version is actually something that is very effective because of the resources that are backing APTs. They're usually funded by organizations that have a lot of money and whose main target is to steal someone's data, whether that's an organization, another nationality's government. And they have a lot of resources to do that research and employ those techniques to steal that data. They're advanced because, again, what they're doing is they're utilizing a lot of gathering of intelligence. They're doing a lot of research. They're not in a rush. This could be a project that takes many months, doing the background work and doing that intelligence gathering. Another one is persistence. If one tactic doesn't work, they'll try something else. Another tactic doesn't work, they'll try something else until they find a formula that works. So they're very persistent. They're not giving up on that. Threats, they're utilizing multi-vector attacks. They're customizing certain malware that they know will evade that particular organization. So again, they're very threatening in this regard. So that kind of gives you a framework of what an APT is from a high-level standpoint. But again, maybe to better define it is, let's take a step back and talk through it and how it compares to a traditional blended attack. These traditional blended attacks are something that we've all been familiar with. We've dealt with them for over a better part of a decade. And generally how this works is, a hacker, they'll create a fake web page and create a fake web server here. And that's eventually where it's going to store any captured data they receive. Next, they'll probably send a mass phishing email. They'll send a single spam email to millions of users across the world. They don't customize it, but they'll send it to people here in Argentina, folks in the United States, folks in Africa and China. Send that out to anyone that they have the mailing list of. 2, all they're looking for is a handful of people who will click on the email, read through the email, click on the link that might be embedded in that email, who will fall for the trap. Send the user data, you click onto that web page, and boom, your user's passwords on the username is now posted on this fake server. 2, the fact is, when you visit the page, even if you didn't send in your user credentials, the fact is you might have downloaded an exe file or some type of binary code that is downloaded onto your system, basically allowing the hacker to have remote control of that system, right? So again, the basic framework. So we'll go through a little test because we've all gotten very good at dealing with phishing scams over the course of the last 10, 15 So this was a recent phishing email that was sent out throughout the world. So some of you who somehow don't have an anti-spam filter might have gotten through into your inbox, whether that's your personal email or maybe your corporate email. So again, when you look at it, just through your lens, through your eyes here, you can probably suspect that this is probably suspicious, right? Now, if you're not familiar, USAA is a bank in the United States. You're probably thinking, well, I'm here in Argentina. It's probably unlikely that you're a USAA customer, right? So again, that's telltale one that this might not be legitimate. You're not even a customer, right? Two, if you actually look at the from email address, it's from a accounts.net account. Why is an email from supposedly USAA coming from an accounts.net email? Right? That's strike number two. That's kind of odd here, right? Likely you're not going to fall for this trap. Three, when you look at the embedded link there, it has a USAA address. So you're thinking, okay, maybe it is legitimate. If you actually click on it, it takes you to this web page that has no discernible idea of being affiliated with USAA. It has these numbers and this domain that you don't recognize, right? So just by looking at it with your eyes, you're probably able to figure out that this is a phishing campaign or some type of illegitimate email. So you've gotten very good at it because you've become adept at it over the course of 10 years of training and dealing with this type of subject matter, right? And some of the traditional security measures also are very good at being able to detect this type of malware, right? One, the email again was sent from a known spam address. That email has a very poor reputation score. It's an email that is notorious for sending out illegitimate emails. So your anti-spam engine will likely capture that, and you'll probably never even see it in your inbox. So very effective in doing that, right? Two, again, maybe if it embedded some type of exe file or some type of binary file into the email address, your antivirus engine will be able to detect that and scan that because it has a known signature list to be able to detect and tell that, hey, this exe file is something you shouldn't download because it's going to download a Trojan onto your system, right? So benefit number two of your antivirus engine will be able to block those type of binary files. Three, hey, the email, the embedded URL. You know, it's been known to be suspicious. It's known to be a site that has, in the past, been known to host malicious security files. So again, it's able to block that because it has a known list with the URL filtering capabilities. So of course, how does that fit into kind of these modern threats that we talked about? Why have they been so effective in infiltrating some of these multinational companies? Some large companies that you would think have very tight security. Okay? One, again, step number one is before they even start anything, they gather intelligence. You know, there's a trove of data that's on Facebook, LinkedIn, that's really open to the public, right? So they can do a lot of searching to target particular users within an organization. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a high-level executive at this target organization. It could be someone who's an intern or someone low-level, just so that they can gain entry into the organization and scour that network. So number one is doing that real in-depth research. And again, on public sites that a lot of data is available. So that's step number one. Step number two is, again, remember, a core competency reason of why APTs have been so successful is because they're backed by a lot of resources. And one of those resources is having those actors who have sophistication to actually take over legitimate business servers. So they might be able to take over a bank's server and without the bank even knowing. So that's step number two. Step number three, again, having that background information, they can now send a targeted phishing email. One in which, hey, they know that they're a customer of this particular bank. I could send it to them because, again, they're more likely to fall for it if it's relevant to that particular user. So a targeted phishing email in low volume, and that's a key difference. You're not sending it to mass users across various countries. It's very focused to particular users within that target organization. Right? And Again, same ploy. All you need is that one user to really fall for the lure to either send in their user credentials, but also allow them to, again, infiltrate the network, get onto the system, and have a surveying of the entire organization's network security infrastructure there. So, I mean, that's a big key there, in which, again, private information like roadmap data, financial data, might be sifted back right into the original server. So again, very similar to the model that we saw earlier, but key differences too, key subtle differences between the modern blended attack and a traditional blended attack. So again, we'll walk through this similar exercise and how they might manipulate a phishing email that you might have seen in the past. So again, what we saw in the past was take this generic email, but now what they might do is, hey, I know that some background information on this particular user at this organization. They're a user and they're a customer at Banco de la Nación Argentina. Okay, so I'll insert that, modify it a bit. Number two, they hacked into their actual server, let's say. You know, they've gotten into their system to one particular email user and be able to send email through that user. So again, it's coming from a legitimate email address that doesn't have a reputation in the past of being a spammer. Three, again, because they've been able to compromise a legitimate website, they're able to actually put that into the label. And when someone clicks on it, again, they're going to a legitimate website that now has been compromised. So three subtle things, as well as, of course, directing that email to that particular user to make it more personalized. Again, subtle differences, but key differences on the effect of these type of modern attacks. So again, if we revisit the traditional security measures and how they're kind of evaded through this technique that we just walked through. One, again, we talked about it just a few seconds ago. It's coming from a legitimate email address, right? In the past, they never sent spam. Everything that they sent was legitimate from a bna.com.ar email address. Two, in that email that we saw, there was no attachment. When you actually clicked on the link, there was no download of exe files. So again, your AV engine essentially is useless in that regard because there was no download. There was nothing to compare to the signature list that you've had in the past. So AV engine, in this case, hasn't been very effective at detecting this. Three, again, it was from a bna.com AR site. You know, it's been categorized as a bank. Yesterday, 2 hours ago, it was classified as a bank. So again, very legitimate, a legitimate website. So your static URL filter list would be able to not be able to detect this particular instance here. Okay, so when we're talking about some of the best practices of trying to avoid or minimize the risk of APTs, there are some approaches that you can take to kind of minimize that. Number one is, again, having the real-time understanding of the URL. Again, not what it was a week ago or 2 days ago or even an hour ago, but be able to understand at that moment in time the content and whether that reputation of that site is good or not. So that's number one. Two, and we'll talk to this a little bit more in the next slide, is granular classification. Now, most web pages now today aren't just fixed on one topic, right? Like Facebook.com, that could be labeled as a social networking site. But in fact, those particular user pages could be about sports, entertainment, and other topics. So again, granular classification and having that understanding is another important key. Third is real-time analysis of web content. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide as well. Is understanding not just the content and the subject matter on that page, but also understanding what the code is doing underneath, behind the hood, the JavaScripts, the code, the exe that's running behind those pages. Four is just understanding what's leaving your data, understanding what type of data is leaving your network. Okay, so we talked about granular classification. Again, most pages now, again, have a mix of subjects. And so oftentimes, they're behind passwords. How are you able to classify web pages if they're behind passwords? Right? So those key areas and being able to understand the various topics on a page is a key area to be able to allow acceptable use policies. So again, if you look at even Facebook.com, here's the distribution of what Facebook.com is. Again, all of us would probably attribute Facebook.com as being a social network, is that right? Right. So, but if you actually drill down to these various pages, again, 51% is actually entertainment pages of Facebook. 21% is on society and lifestyles and basically pop pages. So again, a very diversifying content that's not specifically related to social networking. So again, having that understanding is a key to kind of battling some of these ATPs here. 2, again, may look like a simple web page, but there's a lot of things that's going on here, right? You want to, before you download the page, be able to analyze the web page as that browser is being downloaded. Understand the various components that are running in the background, ActiveX, Flash, Silverlight, and be able to interpret that code and understand what it's doing on the back end. So be able to decompose that on the fly is a big key feature of understanding the various web pages. 3, again, understanding the data transmission. There's a lot of data that's flying through your email and your various sources here. 1, again, is to analyze that content. Be able to understand whether, again, that is product roadmaps that are being sent through the web or being sent through email. And be able to detect that automatically so that you can quarantine it or even block that entirely. So again, understanding the data is a key component in terms of battling APTs, because what are they looking for? They're looking for that confidential data that either you, senior executive management, has on your particular company. Okay? Now, another key area that is really gaining growth, that's expanding beyond our traditional perimeter, is mobile devices. Now, how many people are utilizing mobile devices for work right now? Large population of the room, right? And what we're seeing here in Latin America is really replicating what we're seeing worldwide. Now, just last year, between 2009 and 2010, 60% of all Latin American mobile phone users have switched from a feature basic phone to a smartphone. It's a pretty big number right there. Now, what's happening is by 2014, so in 3 short years, the number of Latin American users using a smartphone will jump up to 130 million users. Now, to put that in perspective, current day right now, there's about 25 million desktop PCs that are being sold. So what we're looking at is a 5-time growth between smartphones and the number of desktop PCs being sold right now. So this is a huge area that is not going to go away. I mean, enterprises are going to be dealing with this more and more as the years go on, particularly when 2014 reaches. And one of the reasons why the popularity is so great and why the growth has been so explosive is because these smartphones can host apps, right? There's over 500,000 apps on the Android market and the Apple App Store that allows you to deploy these and download these on your phone. But again, what's difficult for IT administrators and security is to manage those for each of their various users. Right? This is a great avenue to be for the bad guys to create malicious apps. Now, some of you might have heard 3 months back in June on the Android market was Android Dream. And this is a free app that over 120 million users, 120,000 users downloaded. And what they unknowingly did was also download an app that stole their data. So it's a big crime out there that's available in the Android market here, or in the app market here. Another area is around data ownership. Who owns that data? Right, a lot of you are probably utilizing your mobile phone for both your personal use as well as for business use. You have your personal emails and your work emails. You have your personal contacts and your work contacts. And now that's all being blended in a single device. Who owns that data, right? Does the company own that data, or do you own that data? So that's one challenge and issue that IT security and IT administrators are facing there. And what's really adding to that complexity is the device ownership. Who owns that device? Now, many of you are probably bringing in your own device to work. A lot of organizations are allowing their employees to purchase a mobile phone or a tablet or their own laptop. Let's bring your own device, this BYOD concept. And what happens if you decide to leave in a year from employer A and you want to move to employer B? They want to wipe out your system or your mobile phone, right? But what happens to all your personal data? Does that get wiped out away as well? So that's kind of the discussion and the thought process that many IT administrators are dealing with. And this has really caught them off guard because of how explosive the growth has been over the past year and a half. So there are some options for IT administrators right now to try to keep it safe. But they do all have their drawbacks and their flaws. One is just using ActiveSync. Now most of you who are using a mobile phone are probably utilizing ActiveSync right now. Now that's a built-in system that is leveraging and sitting between Exchange and that mobile device, right? Being able to sync your calendars, sync your emails so that if you delete an email on your mobile phone when you get back to the desktop, it's already deleted from your email. But of course, the drawback of that is that there's no ability to prevent any data loss, right? If you leave your smartphone over at the desk and someone takes it because you weren't watching it, guess what? That's gone. ActiveSync is not going to help you with that issue there. Two, we have seen very paranoid anti-IT administrators utilize the technique of backhauling traffic over VPN. Essentially, basically utilizing the capabilities on these mobile phones and the VPN capabilities built in, and sending all traffic back to headquarters. Did you guys get that? All that information going back to headquarters. So that's a lot of data being transferred back and forth between your phone and headquarters. So that's a very high infrastructure, very high management cost for organizations. But that is one method that some organizations are attacking and trying to better secure mobile. Three is utilizing tablet as a terminal. Essentially utilizing their phones or tablets, PCs, as basically just viewing devices, where the organization has set up a server farm to host all applications, and all you do is view Salesforce or view any important data on your phone. You can't do anything else and can't download apps. But that really goes against the mantra, the value proposition of having mobile phones and downloading apps. Last is mobile device management. That's another area that's really gained popularity as a stopgap solution. Basically allowing IT administrators to determine what apps you can download and blocking the apps that aren't acceptable overall to the organization. So one of these four areas are kind of the current options that many organizations are taking to solve kind of the mobility problem here. But of course, many of you are probably not prepared to invest in some of those type of technologies, right? They're expensive, or they might not fit into your plan at this point, or maybe you don't even have a plan in its current state. You have to kind of devise that. But some of these current, where you basically could leverage your existing infrastructure, is to take two approaches. One, again, is to anyone connecting to your network, your on-campus, on-premise network, and be able to connect, allowing your users to connect their mobile device onto that network, essentially utilizing it as another endpoint. So that's one capability where you could apply the same security policies that you do for each laptop, each PC, and apply it to those mobile phones. So that's one quick fix to really manage some mobile devices that connect onto your enterprise network on your local campus. Two is to be able to manage the email content that a mobile device is able to receive. Now, 90% of those emails, they're harmless. You could allow them to receive, any communication between the various employees. But there are some particular content that may be very sensitive that you don't want secured on a 4-digit password on a mobile phone. And that could be things like a product roadmap or financial data before earnings. Those are very sensitive data that you might not want an end user to receive on their mobile phone. And there's ways to begin to block that, basically intercept it between the Exchange server and the mobile phone. So really act as an intermediary and a middle point to intercept any type of sensitive data and blocking it from ever being received at the endpoint. So that's one of those two areas that you can do today. Now some of the things as you do your planning and develop a strategy for your mobile security is to look at some of the things that you might be able to do in a year or maybe 2 years or in the next few months. And that third step is really protecting those phones that aren't on your campus. You know, when those users are connecting through 3G or through a public Wi-Fi at a cafe, be able to protect those users as well. So that's really that next step that you may be wanting to view after you've employed the first 2 steps that you can do now. The fourth step is, again, having very deep understanding of the content that's going outside of your employees' mobile phone. Be able to detect and sense the data that they're sending, not only through email, but also what pages that they're visiting that they might be able to send through web apps or web traffic. So being able to determine that data and be able to control that data would be another stepping point for you to better manage the mobile security downstep we're seeing right now. Those are some steps that you could take between now as well as down moving into the future. Okay? Now another area that we're seeing some growth is in the cloud. How many people here are utilizing some type of cloud-based application, maybe Salesforce.com? Right? Good number of you here. And again, that's prevalent because we all know what the benefits and values are, right? Benefits of SaaS-based applications are readily apparent, right? What are some of the benefits that you're already receiving? Right? There's no on-premise hardware. You don't have to deploy any type of hardware onto your on-premise infrastructure. Right? There's no software or license cost. This is something that you buy as you go, right? You could sign up for a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year subscription. So the cost benefits are very high because they reduce your infrastructure costs. You know, you don't have to have another IT administrator to manage another system. So that's a big benefit of SaaS applications. Another is anywhere activity. You know, we're at this event. You know, a lot of us aren't connected to VPN or don't want to connect to VPN. And the SaaS application connecting to Salesforce.com or some of these other web-based applications, you could do so easily either at a station here at a local cafe or through your BlackBerry to be able to improve your productivity and efficiency as if you're working at the office. So those are some key benefits with SaaS. But of course, there's also the pitfalls that worry IT administrators or those working in IT security. Certainly a gap in security, right? The security policies that you apply to what you have on-premise is different from what you apply to those in the cloud. Right? Security policy is different because you no longer are managing that system. So the policies of how you protect that data is inconsistent with the data that you have stored on-premise. So that's a gap in security because you have limited control on that data use. And again, anywhere access, as easy it is for us to get on as employees, it's also easier for the hackers to access as well, right? Because now they don't have to penetrate your systems and securities that are in place, but they have multiple means to try to attack a cloud-based type of solution. So there are some benefits and pitfalls. But again, if we review and go back to our original diagram here is, again, maybe you have a very well-protected system in your traditional deployment capabilities. But again, one area that you now have to worry about too is all that information that's stored in the cloud. How's that being accessed? How your users are accessing that mail, that data to ensure that confidential data isn't being misused. Okay, so in terms of some of the steps to take in terms of the requirements to better secure SaaS-based or data applications is, again, to monitor and enforce the use of that database information. Again, understand who's accessing that email. Should that person who's not in sales be able to access sales information, right? Be able to apply those administrative type of controls on that data that's being stored on Salesforce.com. Again, be able to secure that data whether it's on your network or off the network, and apply consistent policies there. So again, that's another key area that you want to take in terms of being able to deploy Salesforce.com and be able to control that type of data. So if we walk through the summary of what we've learned in terms of web security, 3 key takeaways. URL classification, again, you don't want to be dependent on static lists or lists that have been updated 5 days ago or a week ago or even 2 hours ago, but be able to understand the classification of those URL right here and right now. So that's one key takeaway in terms of securing the web and securing and blocking against these APT type of attacks. 2, analyze the web content. Not just understand the content that's written, but understand what's going on in the background. Understand the JavaScript that's running, those various scripts that are running in the background, the ActiveX code and what it's doing, to understand that it isn't being malicious. Real-time web content analysis is what you want to accomplish in combating those APTs. 3, analyzing the data that's leaving the network. Again, should sales forecasting data be sent to a partner? Should it be sent to a customer? Being able to regulate those users and who accesses that and who's being able to send what outside of the network is another key strategy against blocking those APTs. For mobile security, again, what you want to do right now today, again, is to take a multifaceted, multi-phase approach. One, again, is to restrict certain emails onto those mobile devices right now, so that, again, confidential data doesn't reach these mobile devices. Being able to intercept that and be able to understand that content. And 2, being able to allow those mobile users to access your enterprise network through their mobile phones, but allow them to do so with consistent policies that you already deploy and employ on other devices with PCs or desktops. So again, those are some key areas in the web security area. For cloud security, again, protect the use of that data. Be able to fingerprint that data to understand who's accessing that data and what's leaving the cloud-based solution, so that you have it very tightly managed in terms of who's accessing what. Of course, with the integration of these, one thing that you do want to look for is just being able to apply that once and for all, right? Not having to do this multiple steps, but being able to do that through one solution and be able to push that out and have that consistent policy throughout your organization. So again, just for your guys' knowledge here, we are Websense. Websense is a unified management security vendor which deals with web, email, and data security. So again, we do have a booth outside where if you do have any questions or are looking for some best practices to improve your mobile security or your cloud security, certainly swing by. We have many resources here that can help you with your questions here. So I believe we have about 10 minutes, so if there's any questions, we certainly would certainly accept them now. And so do we have any questions, or are we all shy? And we'll certainly take them offline at the booth as well. All right. Well, thank you very much for sitting with us.
CXO Community.